There's a lot of different taxes that citizens pay, every day. I mean, you think about all that we pay as citizens of this state and this country. We pay a huge amount of money. Most of our money goes to Washington. We all know that. And that's a disaster. I mean, we got a $21 trillion debt, $1 trillion deficits, spending money on ridiculous projects that mean nothing for the future of the country. At the state level, I just explained in the first half of the show today how South Carolina manages never to pass any reforms in Columbia, but always increases the state spending every single year beyond the growth in the economy. I understand increasing state spending to keep up with population and inflation, but they spend more every year way beyond population and inflation. Where we really get into trouble is in state and local or little local governments, county councils, school districts that have the power to affect your property taxes. And that's where you really get nickeled and dimed even more. And it doesn't make the headlines as much as federal and state stuff, right? Because the local news covers mostly state stuff. National news covers Washington stuff. Very few people talk about local stuff. Now, I realize we have people listening all over South Carolina and more than about 15, 20 counties in this state, in both the upstate and the Midlands market. But I'm going to give you a success story out of Spartanburg County, my home county. In Spartanburg County School District 3, we all know that school districts, they love passing millage rate increases and getting their hands in your pocket, but they like to build these Taj Mahal buildings, even if they don't necessarily need them. Well, in School District 3, Spartanburg County, that's where Broome High School is. They put on a ballot referendum for a $58 million spending project for a new building, and they wanted the local taxpayers to pay more. Well, last night it got voted down. I'm very happy to hear that. Tommy Dimsdale is a local activist in School District 3 in Spartanburg County and helped to organize opposition to this school district proposal. Tommy, what was the margin last night, man?
Pretty big. We won by about 63%. The people who voted no, there was about 1,110 versus 701. So that's a pretty resounding defeat and a message to local governments that we've been taxed enough already.
Well, I look at being a Spartanburg native, I think about every school district in the county, it seems like, in the last few years has undertaken very large spending projects, new construction projects. Some of them were needed. Some of them weren't as needed. I'm from the Inman area, so I went to Chapman High School. And I will tell you, they needed a new building, and about 10 years ago or more, they built one. But it didn't lead to a massive tax hike. They managed to find ways to pay for it because they didn't build more of a building than they needed, right? And the building that I went to is no longer the high school, and it was in pretty tough shape to still serve as a high school of that size. So I get it that sometimes it's needed. What we've seen, though, up until recently, and it may not have changed even now, Dorman High School had the third largest football stadium in South Carolina. Do you know that? The first was Clemson and Carolina, then Dorman. Now, how does that happen? How does a publicly funded high school, you get Clemson and Carolina, and then Dorman High School, and a lot of the expense of that big campus were sports facilities. That's not critical to the future education of kids. So I understand wanting to build good facilities. We should have good facilities, but sometimes it's just a matter of we want to build a bigger building than the other school district has, and then you get these $58 million spending projects in relatively small districts like District 3 is, and then they go try to hit the taxpayers. And it sounds like people in your neck of the woods said, we're done with this.
Absolutely. And, a lot of it that we've really been aggravated about is the fact that these school boards, they always get to pick their own dates for the referendum. And I'd love to see some South Carolina legislature step up, no matter how suicidal it might be, to pass some legislation saying that, no, you have to have these referendums on a date where the general public gets a better chance at being heard, because they get to pick their own dates, and then they get their own people out, and, all the friends of the school boards and some of the teachers go out and get the parents to all go vote for this new school. And then you have the average citizen turns around and he looks into his mailbox, and all of a sudden he's paying $200, $400, $600 more a year on taxes, wondering what in the world happened. And then I'll usually see, the school board people will wag their fingers at this person and say, well, you should have been more involved. When in actuality, this person's working 40, 50, maybe some of them working 60 hours a week, not only trying to pay their bills, but trying to pay the already egregious taxes that are levied on them. So yeah. I think it's very, I think it's unethical.
Well, I agree that it's unethical. I don't think they should have that power. I do think there should be conforming standards through the South Carolina legislature to say that elections for school board tax increases, millage rate increases, should happen on a uniform date, and it should happen with any other election. In my opinion,
Yes.
they shouldn't be able to say, hey, we're going to hold a April election to try to hike your taxes. They should have to put it as a ballot referendum on an election day that's scheduled for other offices. It should be every November or the primary, whatever. It needs to coincide when people are already going to the polls, because I hear people say all the time stuff like, well, these school districts, people always vote for these spending increases because they want this. No, they don't. The school districts send out emails to all their employees and all of their supporters to go vote in favor on days that nobody else knows as an election. And then the people get mad and find out they got hosed. If you held these things on the same day as any other election, they'd never pass this stuff. Because if you go and tell people that kids are starving in the lunchroom, then yes, you're going to actually be able to get folks to say we need to fund that, all right? But whenever they go say, hey, we need a $58 million golf course at Dorman, no, people aren't going to be okay with that. So I guess in light of that being the case, that this happened on an off-year election and on in April, how did you manage to get enough folks to turn out against it? I mean, who publicized this?
This is crazy. This is kind of an anomaly, because we just started this campaign about a week and a half out from the election, because I've had personal things going on. And then I had one of my supporters from my District 33 House run. He called me up and said, hey, I've got some money. I want to help defeat this. So I, typed up a quick letter. He gave the approval. His name's Roger Crow. And, he did a lot of the groundwork for this. And Roger, if you're listening, I appreciate you, buddy. You put up some money so that the rest of us didn't have to pay out $58 million. And I applaud that. That is being a good citizen. And then I turned around, and I got to give kudos to Kerry Wood as well. I kind of dropped this in his lap at the last minute, and said, hey, we got 1 week until this vote comes down, and can you get this done? So he dropped all of his personal business stuff and got that mailer out, and I helped him do it. But on top of that, we just had a real strong social media push and brought some things to light that the people didn't know. I got a ton of kickback when this happened. I merely suggested that there was a conflict of interest between the district chairman of District 3 schools, and he had a construction business. I'm not even going to mention his name. I don't want to defame anybody. I don't want to defile anybody. But that's a conflict of interest to me, because had this school been built, you're going to have tons of subdivisions that were already planned to go up that he stands to make money on.
Yeah.
And as a chairman, I believe he should have recused himself from this, from supporting it. If you want to go vote yes, that's totally okay. But, I think that's a political misstep to be pushing something that you could potentially make thousands of dollars on.
Well, I would say, Tommy, is you look at overall what's happening with education. I spent the first half of the show today talking about the failure of real reform in South Carolina legislature. We have significant problems retaining teachers. I agree that the teachers need a pay increase. The problem is they're spending $159 million more dollars the state doesn't have. We got one-time surplus. They're spending that money, and then we're going to be on the hook as taxpayers for $159 million more dollars every year between now and probably the second coming of Christ, and no offsetting cuts anywhere else. And we locally, we see these school districts, instead of trying to improve the quality of the classroom instruction and the teacher quality, they spend money on buildings that sometimes aren't necessary. So I'm really glad to see that voters in South Carolina or Spartanburg County, School District 3, voted down a referendum to hike their taxes last night to build more buildings instead of the school district learning to live within its means. And what I would say is, I got a really good friend on School District 2, Jason C. Great guy, good conservative. I know that if they ever decide to vote for a millage increase in Bowling Springs, which is, look, that's my neck of the woods. I'll be paying that thing if it were to pass. I know Jason's going to vote no, and I'm certainly going to help him with that, because every school district that's building right now needs to learn how to build within the current revenues and don't go try to hose taxpayers who are already taxed too much. But Tommy, I appreciate your being here today, Tommy Dimsdale. Thanks for your help in defeating a tax hike in District 3. Hang on during the break. We need to talk to you about scheduling another conversation with you. So, all right, guys, again, Tommy, is there a website you can give people they can learn more about what happened and how to replicate this?
You know what? You can go to facebook.com/Dimsdale debate and look at some of the postings on there. And I've got my own YouTube channel, but I'll be posting a follow-up video on exactly how we did it, all right?
Sounds good. Tommy Dimsdale, thank you for your efforts in helping organize opposition to another tax increase by a school district. Guys, stick with us. We're back in 3 minutes with my friend Dr. Tony Beam for Worldview Wednesday, right here on Common Sense.